Hey guys, I've spoken before about how you go about working on an image in terms of processing it. You want to think about, first of all, the overall contrast, or what we call digitally, we call these global things, things that affect the whole image. And then you want to think of individual things that affect just small specific areas within the image. And this little short video is about two tools that you'll use quite a bit to control the values of local areas. So without ado, let's get rid of this and get right on to it. Now, if you remember this guy from the little workflow video previous to this, here it is right here. And I mentioned in that video that what my intention here is to pull these two rocks out away from the background so that the golden light that's hitting them really pops them right out of there. We have some problems up here because there is nothing to block the sunlight, and so it's on the bedrock up here. So I'm going to have to darken that. Maybe some other little elements too might need to be darkened. This right in here, I don't know. That little guy right there is kind of, it's a little bit distracting. I could probably bring that down a little bit. This little thing over here on the edge. And you see this rock that's in between these two guys. I don't know how I feel about that. Should I brighten that up? Should I darken that up? I don't know. But all these are our individual local decisions. And for the tools that you're going to use, for the most part, I'm going to point these out to you. So they're right up here at the top here. You've got all of these sort of things that affect more local areas than anything else, aside from the tool for cropping, which is over here. This is a spot removal tool. We don't really have spots on this image here. They wouldn't show up with all this rock texture, but chances are if there was sky, there'd be a spot there, especially if the sensor in my camera was dirty. And I could sometimes use this spot removal tool to remove things like these grasses down here that are blowing in the wind. These tiny little grasses, if they're totally distracting. I don't think they're too bad here, but I can actually try to blend those out of there. This is for removing red eye when you use a strobe or a flash that reflects into the person's eye. By the way, when you do use a flash and you're in a room and with people, turn the lights on in the room before you use the flash, or have one of those flashes that winks to get the pupils of the eyes smaller before the flash goes off. Over here is one of the tools we're going to use. This is called the gradient tool. There's a great video on this within Lightroom. Matter of fact, all of these things, fantastic videos within Lightroom that I'm also including, for you to look at for your education and so forth. This is a new tool in Lightroom 5. What it is, it creates a spot. And it's used a circle or oval or area around which you can blur things out, darken things, so you can highlight a specific point within your photograph. It's kind of part of the new shallow depth of field kind of thing we're going through in photography. Actually, it's been that way for past about 15 years or so. Before that, when I was growing up, it was everything in focus. Now it's very highly selective focusing that seems to be popular. So, interesting. So over here on the left is the paintbrush tool, and we'll be using that today. So let's look at our image here. First thing I'm going to do is to say, this whole area up here needs to be darkened. So I'm going to use the gradient tool to do that. That's probably the easiest way to do it. Select the gradient tool over here. I'll come over onto the image here and hold down on the mouse and drag towards the front. And you see what happens? You get these three lines, 1, 2, 3. And this represents the area that it'll cover back here. This is the most affected area here. This is the least affected area here. And this is for when I want to turn it on and off. If I had to aim this thing a little bit better, I just grab this middle bar and kind of squiggle it around like that. So let's see, it doesn't look like any different now, but since I've done this, look at all these different options I've got, all these things I can do within this. I can darken it, which is what I'm going to do here just a little bit. Since the intent is to kind of pop that rock out of there, I got to darken the area around it. I'm also going to lighten the rock too, you'll see. Contrast, how about if we lower the contrast a little bit over there to soften it a little bit. I can darken the shadows just to here. Actually, I'm going to open the shadows just to here. Bring the highlights down a little bit to deaden it. Clarity, I'm going to make it a little bit softer. You see all these different things, these different controls I can do to that area. I've selected it using this gradient tool, and then I affect it using this. And so what it is, it has the most effect here, and then it softens as it gets over here. So it has very little effect on the rock, but it does have a little. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to dodge this rock or take some of the darkness away from this rock or brighten it up in a few minutes. So let's see, do I have another gradient tool that I want to do? Let's click on New over here, and I'll get a new gradient tool option. How about one right at the top there? Just a short one down there, just a little one down there to help with the way that lighting was. It's pretty intense here. I don't know, there we go. Computer's kind of misfunctioning here a little bit. There we go. Okay, so we'll bring this down. I'm going to bring this down just a little bit. Just color just the exposure-wise. Pretty good down there. Lower the contrast a little bit. Highlights down, shadows up a little bit because I don't want to create any more contrast. That would pull your eye over there. I can pop sharpness down just a little bit and the clarity down just a fraction like that. Good. I'm going to click that off. So, if at any time, I'll turn it back on. If at any time I didn't like those, all I had to do was highlight them. See how there's black there? And then just hit the delete button and they'll disappear. And I can start right back. So anyway, let's close those off. Okay, not bad. Now I've got, I mentioned before that, there's certain things I want to do. I want to kind of brighten this area up here so it pops away a little bit. I want to kind of darken this guy up here just a little bit too because he seems to be getting, for me anyway, visually competing with this down here. And this down here, this little rock down here. Now, so to do that, we're going to use the paintbrush tool. So click on the paintbrush tool. And paintbrush tool, we have the same sort of thing, but we have these extra little controls down here with the paintbrush tool. You can select the type of brush you want. I'll hold this over a darker area so you can see it. And the brush size you control with the not the, I don't know what these are called. These little can't think of the name. Not the parentheses, but the little sort of C-shaped tools. I don't know, up and down. There we go. Can't remember the name of it, but bear with me. So, okay, so if this is on A, this is a soft one. See, it has two lines there. If it's on B, if it's on B, come on B. If it's on B, we'll have a single line, so it's a much harder edge to it. And usually I use A most of the time, just to make things. And if you can feather the edge, how large you want that area by this right here. Whether you want it really sharp or whether you want a broad feather, usually moderate thing. And the flow has to do with how much it goes from no effect to total effect. Auto mask is really fascinating, and I'll show you how amazing that is. I'm going to select this rock right here, and then we're going to try to darken it to see what happens. It looks like it's going to change color a little bit too, but anyway, let's get this. Let's get this down here. Okay, now I position my pointer right here over the rock, and I keep that plus sign inside the rock as I come around here. And you notice I'm not being that careful. I'm just kind of following the outline of the rock, and there we go. Now, let's see here. There we go. Now I want to see what I missed. Right now you can't see anything because it's almost like all these things are opaque. So I'm going to take the exposure and just darken it intentionally too dark. So I can see that, oh, I've got to fill in this center portion here. Well, I still have the paintbrush selected from that previous selection, so there you go. So you see it didn't select this rock over here or the one behind it, it just selected that one. So let's go back. That's a little too dark on the exposure, I think. Matter of fact, I don't think it needs a darkening of the exposure necessarily. Let's get to 0. I think maybe the contrast needs to come down a little bit, and I think some of the highlights need to come down more than anything, just to give it a little separation down there. Clarity, I'm going to soften it a little bit too. Okay, let's get another paintbrush going here, and we're going to paint over here. Now notice that it's kind of hard to see this area here. It's very small. If I go over here, see, notice I have I'll turn this off. The navigator over here allows you to see a little miniaturized version of what's over here. Say I wanted to blow this up bigger. That's a little too big in terms of what I want to do. But you see this box right over here? I can drag this box around, and it's, come on, and it's showing me what I'm seeing on the screen, except it's chunking itself around here a lot. Well, that's way too much of an enlargement to work with. So I'm going to go with maybe 2 to 1s. Oops, I'm sorry. Wrong way. 1 to 4, maybe something like that. So, okay, much better. So we can see what's going on over here on the side here. So that's a slight enlargement. Now I said I wanted to come in here with the paintbrush. So we'll click on the brush we'll click on the brush to make it active. And I'm going to come over here. I've got the masking on, so it's going to follow the edge of this. As long as I keep that plus inside the line here. Now I'm not going to dodge the whole rock, just kind of this edge of it over here. So let's bring this down a little bit, and I'll show you. We'll check how good I was. Oh, see, I missed some in the middle. So let's go back and fill in this middle. We don't want to just have it affect the edges. We want to affect that whole sort of rock face, just to separate it a little bit from the ground around it. So let's bring it up a little bit. In this case, I'm going to brighten it up a little bit. So let's see. I'm going to go back to the full-size screen so I can see how I'm doing here in light of the whole image. And there you go. A couple of nice little ones here. Should we go up and do this one too? Sure, let's do that. Okay, see how small that is up there? Let's go to the, what did we say, 1 to 4? Let's go 1 to 3 on that. That might help us a little bit bring our thing up there. You can tell I'm not very accurate with this whole thing. There we go. Okay, so I'm up here, and I want to make my paintbrush smaller, so I'm going to use the brackets. That's what I was trying to think of earlier. Brackets. I've got my paintbrush on. I've got auto mask on down here. So let's go down. And we'll see. We'll come in here a little bit. We'll come down here. I don't know how far I can get, but there you go. We'll come up here, and we'll see how we're doing. Now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to darken my exposure so I can see how good or how bad I was. Not bad. Then I'm going to come in here and kind of fill it in. We want to come over a little bit tighter with the paintbrush. And by the way, if you make a mistake, which you probably will, I've been doing this a bit, so try not to make too many mistakes. If you make a mistake, if you press down on the Option key or the Alt key, depending if Option key for a Mac and Alt key for a PC, that plus turns into a minus, and you can erase. You can erase. So there, you can also click on Erase over here, but this activates that erase. Can you see it? So when I do that, the erase comes alive. So I'll take my finger off because I don't need to erase. Okay, let's go back up here. And the idea here was to darken it just a hair to get it to kind of not compete a little bit. Careful the coloring doesn't get a little wacky on me here. Highlights are down. Let's see. Clarity, let's soften it out just a little bit. Sharpness, those kinds of things. Now we'll go back and we'll look at the whole image and see how that looks in light of everything else. So, not bad. I got another one down here I was going to do. Click on New. I'm going to see if I can work from this level. I can't. See how small that is down there? Good Lord, my eyes aren't that good. So I'm going to come down here, and I've got my paintbrush on, and the size is fairly small here. I should be able to just kind of come around like so. It'll follow the contours. It follows the contrast is what it is. And I'm going to just try to paint in the middle here, thinking that I probably need to fill that in. Let's see what we got. Oh, okay. All right, let's make the paintbrush a little bit bigger. I'm going to open up this bracket a little bit. This might help me paint a wider area. Yeah. I think I had my paintbrush a little small up there from that previous one. Good. So let's get this a little too covered here. Some of the highlights. We want to bring the highlights down actually in this thing. We're trying to get it to blend again. You know, trying to pull this stuff into the background to let the to let those two rocks pop out of there. Okay, let's go back to Fit. Take a look, see how we like it. I'm going to click this paintbrush tool to turn this off so we don't see all the spots. Again, if I turn it on, if I don't like any of those, I can just highlight one, you know, and hit the backspace, and it'll actually blows up right in front of you, and it disappears, and start all over again. So it's another thing about Lightroom. Nothing is permanent here. It's wonderful. So here we go. Here's an end point. Here's what we started with way back. That's before this image, back before we did all that global stuff. So look at that. Blown out shadows, awful. I think it looks a little bit more of how you would see it if you were right there. One more thing I would do to this image, actually, and this is kind of an extra on this video before I put it out. I'd go down to Effects. Open up Effects, and we have a thing called Vignetting. And what this does is darken the edges. And you know, especially when you're making prints, sometimes darkening the edges helps hold the edges a little bit better. It helps define, you know, kind of the image. And especially in this case where I've got kind of a centralized thing happening here. Look at that. Isn't that nice? You know, with that, just that little bit. I'll turn it off here. So just that little bit of darkening on the edges kind of helps those rocks pop out of there. So that's about it for this short little video, and I'll be back with you soon.